The Chair now recognizes the Chairman of the full committee and the distinguished gentleman from California, Chairman Issa, for an opening.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Congressman Lynch, for giving me the opportunity to come after you. And I don't mean come after you personally, but
have at it. Bring it on.
No. We have two congressional colleagues here, and they both have business backgrounds. Congressman Marino, like you, I spent decades on the factory floor. One thing we understand in the private sector, and I think you're going to hear it in their testimony and in any Q&A, we understand in the private sector that you're probably absolutely right on some portion of what you just said. 2 million people, 10.5 million full or part-time contractors, all or part. We're not debating that. They all fall under this committee's jurisdiction. The real question is, how are we getting the best value? And the one thing I believe that this committee has seen in hearing after hearing after hearing, and we will continue to see until we make real fundamental changes, there's no cost accounting. Now, in the previous time under President Bush, I sat on this committee and other committees, and rightfully so, I saw them not do cost accounting. They simply hired a bunch of people to get us through the early days of the war. And on this side of the aisle and on your side of the aisle, we started complaining that, well, where is the cost justification for this and that? Why is it cost hundreds of dollars a gallon to bring a gallon of fuel out to the combat end of the line? The real question is not, is there waste in government? We exist because there's a tremendous amount of waste, and we have done very little to deal with it. Now, as we look at attrition or changes in the Federal workforce, including an end to arbitrary insourcing, which is what's been happening under the Bush administration, arbitrary insourcing. They tap contractors on the shoulder, tell them their contract is going to be ending, and they say, we'll give you a pay raise if you come work for us now. Felony, stupid behavior for anyone to do. And we have business people here who will explain exactly how stupid it is to arbitrarily pay more than you need to. What this committee needs to do, and Mr. Lynch, I want to be very much in partnership with you on this committee, we need to cost benefit both outsourced and insourced cost. We need to move this government toward making a genuine decision about what makes long-term and short-term sense, and to do the kind of analysis. Additionally, and Chairman Ross, I think, did a very good job in his opening statement, we need to go to a system in which we justify the individual pay of individual members of the Federal workforce, dynamically understanding that some people in the Federal workforce are underpaid and their jobs go unfilled, and it is difficult. We have seen this before. Some, their jobs become less valuable, but the scale and the system has no flexibility even for new hiring. We need to change that. The private sector understands that supply and demand varies, that what you have to pay to hire a software programmer in 1999 in Silicon Valley is very different than 2001. It was a radical change between you hired people from anywhere and stole them from your competitors to, oh, there was an abundance. That abundance disappears, the price goes up. I look forward to this committee having an honest dialogue, not about what was wrong in outsourcing under the Bush administration or wrong necessarily in insourcing under this administration. We have an obligation to get it right, to figure out how sensible government accounting can in fact put, using your numbers, 12.5 million full or part-time jobs to better use at better value for the American people. I believe this is a good start today. I believe we have the right witnesses to help us set the tone for why it's not about how many workers we have in-house or how many contractors we have out-house. The question is, are we getting our best value? And until we have a system that we can all be confident on a regular and constant basis makes those decisions, those, if you will, dynamic scoring so that we get the best value, we're not going to right-size the Federal workforce in-house or get the best value from our contractors out of the House. I look forward to working with this entire committee. This is the most legitimately bipartisan issue we will have on this committee. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for an opening.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly thank our ranking member. I want to associate my comments and with those of the ranking member. And, you know, I'm listening to all of this, and I'm glad we're doing this hearing. But at a time when Congress is looking for ways to cut spending, I certainly appreciate that everything should be on the table. However, I believe that federal employment in particular has gotten more scrutiny from the majority than it deserves. While I agree that serious changes must be made to improve our financial footing, I disagree with the viewpoint that federal employees should shoulder a disproportionate amount of that burden. As I've mentioned previously before this committee over the past several months, I've been meeting with federal workers who are rightly dismayed that their jobs and benefits are being used as a political football on Capitol Hill. Federal employees saw their 2011 pay raises blocked by the recently enacted 2-year pay freeze. And they are deeply concerned with the daily barrage of news about the possibility of further congressional actions affecting their benefits. My office has been deluged with inquiries from federal workers and their families concerned about agency furloughs and reductions in force, wondering how they will keep paying their mortgages and feeding their children if their paychecks are suddenly stopped. And these are the same employees that on this side of the aisle took a 5% cut and probably will not get another pay raise for the next 4 years. But at the same time, they work on the Hill and they hear our Republican colleagues say that in a fragile economy, we cannot afford to tax the rich, but yet and still their pay cuts, they are being cut in pay, and they are, again, wages being frozen, and they are not making the money that the rich folks are making. Give me a break. Despite assertions to the contrary, the federal workforce has decreased significantly since the 1960s when measured in terms of the number of workers per capita. According to the Office of Management and Budget in 1962, there were 13.3 executive branch employees for every 1,000 Americans, while as of 2010, there were 8.4, the lowest level in the past 50 years. Furthermore, we have seen that decreases in the federal workforce are often met with increases to the contractor workforce, as Mr. Lynch stated. On this point, I'd like to be very clear. Cutting the federal workforce is not a magic solution to our financial troubles. Cutting the federal workforce does not diminish the demand for taxpayer services. For that reason, proposed indiscriminate cuts stand to have two effects. One, increasing the more costly contractor workforce, or two, reducing the efficiency and effectiveness of the services delivered to taxpayers. Recently, in response to Representative Loomis's proposed legislation, Max Dyer, the CEO of the Nonpartisan Partnership for Public Service, had these simple words to say. History has shown that government-wide hiring freezes result in neither smaller nor more effective government. Indeed, downsizing the federal workforce without strategic workforce planning will result in skill gaps, an increased reliance on contractors, and ultimately a government that is less efficient and effective than the American people deserve. None of the proposals we will consider today have adequately addressed Mr. Steyer's concerns over blanket cuts. And so I do look forward to the hearing today. I look forward to hearing our witnesses. And I agree with the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Issa. This is a problem that should have bipartisan solutions. These are issues that affect the very people that we work with every day, the very people that we go back to our offices and see in the next hour or so, the ones that get the early bus, the ones that work hard and give their blood, their sweat, their tears, their compassion to us, Americans. And I do want us to stop beating up on public employees because they play an integral role in all of our society. And I want them to come to work knowing that we appreciate every single thing they do. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Members may have 7 days to submit opening statements and extraneous material for the record. As you know, we do have 2 panels today, and based on an agreement that I have with our presenters now, we're going to limit their testimony to 5 minutes each with regard to their respective legislation. And I'll now recognize the distinguished woman from Wyoming, Ms. Loomis.
Well, thank you, Chairman Ross and Ranking Member Lynch and members of the committee. It's an honor to appear before your subcommittee. I want to assure the ranking member of the full committee of my deep regard for public employees. I was the State Treasurer in my State. I had a loyal, hardworking workforce that contributed mightily to converting our portfolio of savings from $6 billion to over $8 billion during my 8 years as State Treasurer. They are hardworking, dedicated employees, and I see similar skills, abilities, and dedication every day here in the Federal Government. I am proud of public workers. I am proud to be a public worker. My bill is not designed as an attack or an indictment of their skills. It's recognition of where we are in 2011 with regard to the size of our Federal Government and what we need to do to address the impending, unsustainable shortfalls, our debts, our deficits. If we wiped out every single Federal agency that is not interest on the debt and an entitlement program mandatory spending, we still would not have enough money collected in revenues to cover the expenditures of this country. It's going to take every single program, every single person, every single branch of government, every entitlement, every mandatory spending program in order to solve the problems we have today. So this is a small component of the problem, and I bring it to you because of my experience in Wyoming State government. Wyoming has the smallest population in the nation. We also have, per capita, the largest cadre of State, local, and county government workers. Now, in order to maintain a level of service, but nevertheless adjust to Wyoming's boom and bust economy, since our economy really is just entirely based on minerals. The revenues of the State of Wyoming go up and down as mineral production and mineral prices go up and down. So I have learned to adjust to a growing government and a declining government over the course of my political life as a Wyoming legislator, as a director of a State government agency, and then as State Treasurer. Among the tools that we believe works well is the opportunity to up and downsize the State workforce in a way that does not hurt the employee, and you do it by attrition. And this bill, the bill that I am sponsoring, the Federal Workforce Reduction Act of 2011, H.R. 657, does reduce the Federal workforce.